Hello and welcome to the next 100 Days podcast. My name is Graham Arrowsmith.
And my name's Kevin Appleby. You know, Graham, we always have a fantastic time when we have an Australian guest on the podcast.
Sorry, we always have a fantastic time. You mean that singular time that we had with an Australian, or do you mean every time? Because
I mean every time, Graham.
It is actually every time because they're fantastic fun. They're just like living. I mean, and today we have an absolutely wonderful, very, very talented young lady who is, well, I think she's younger than me because I've kind of done the maths.
But everybody's younger than you.
The point is, she looks like she's about 20. But the point is, her name is Jenny Stilwell, and she's from Melbourne, Australia. Welcome, Jenny, to the next 100 Days podcast.
Thank you very much, Graham. I think this is going to be a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to being on it.
You've got more filters on than they've got on iPhones. But I mean, what can I say? But you do look like you're in your 20s, but you're not, are you?
I'm certainly not in my 20s, and I have to say that, 18 months or so ago, I had some photos taken for my new website.
Yeah.
And I showed my partner, and he just wouldn't give me any feedback. And eventually I said, "What is wrong? Like, they're good photos." And he said, "They're great photos, but you look about 40 years of age and far too young to have had the experience you've had." So I went back to the photographer. I said, just don't do anything to them, just natural. So I can assure you,
no,
I am well and truly a lot older than that.
No, you're not. No, well, you are, but at the end of the day, you don't look it, and that's fantastic. That's a fantastic way of being. Actually, my wife gets accused of being younger than she is, but it is something that you should be very proud of. Anyway. Moving on, because I'm in dangerous territory there. I'm digging
very dangerous territory. I suppose the logical question to ask is: so what's all this experience that you've got that you're now bringing to clients?
Okay. Well, I've had probably what most people would call an interesting career. It was textbook up until the time I was in my early 30s, probably. That's what a recruiter told me. But, I climbed the corporate ladder, and I was in the sales and marketing stream, and I got to general management roles. And then there was the recession of, I think it was 93. And
not that one in the early 70s then. That I understand. Okay.
No,
that's okay.
And there weren't any good roles to go to. There was nothing better to go to. So in my wisdom, I thought, well, why don't I just start my own marketing consultancy? And I remember going to see a recruiter, and he said, no, don't be silly. It's a bad time. There's a recession. Don't do it. It's a really bad move. And anyway, I did do it. And I rang back to let him know, just as a matter of courtesy. And they told me that he was no longer there because he'd gone to start his own recruitment consultancy.
Cheeky devil.
So from there, I had a marketing consultancy for 5 years. That was kind of my area of expertise at the time. And then I went back into a company in an executive position. Then I became CEO, then managing director. It was a publicly listed company. So I was, back in the day, quite young at the time to have that sort of role. And then after that, I started a business advisory, and then I was consulting to clients who were in a sort of building their own companies, but in the sort of role and size of company that I'd been running at the time. So I started working with clients who were sort of low 7 figures, going through all their teething problems of growth. I learned a lot as a result of that. I helped them grow, get over challenges. And then I've in the last probably 10 years, I've had 2 CEO roles going into clients' companies where clients have said, come in, and wasn't sort of part of the plan, but I did them. And I finished one just at the end of 2020, got them through that first year of COVID. And now I'm starting my own practice back up again and working with the same sorts of clients. So it's quite varied of being able to, start and grow my own consultancies, but also understanding, being in the thick of it, running a company, dealing with people, dealing with all the issues. So,
amazing career, and you've also become an author as well.
Yes, my first book was called Small Business CEO, just about the 4 key stages that I saw of growth, and trying to simplify that into, well, what are the top 3 things you need to focus on in this stage? Instead of trying to do everything, what are the top 3 things, and what are the top 3 strategies? And then my next book, which is coming out end of May, is called The 7% Club, because I discovered I was writing a book about growth from 7 to 8 figures, but I discovered that there's only 7% of companies in Australia that grow beyond 2 million in turnover. And I didn't doubt it, but I was surprised by it. So I checked the stats for the UK and the US, and it's relative. So it seems to be a universal pattern. So that's my next book.
It's sort of like Pareto, and these, they're almost like, is it called fractal patterns that happen. So if you took the 80-20 and took the 20, it'll have another 80-20 in it. So it's very interesting that 7% in Australia, it's over 2 million Australian dollars. So which is really tiny. So that means there's a heck of a lot of small businesses who never quite get there. Is there a reason for that?
There's a lot. Well, I think, and that's what I tried to uncover with the book, but I think there's lots of reasons. Some people don't want to go there. Some people, a lot of people can build service businesses and have a really nice lifestyle without having to go beyond that mark. Product-based companies are different because, you can get to a million and a half quite easily, but suddenly, you sell in your range to a major retailer and boom, off you go. So a lot of companies, I think, a lot of business people don't necessarily want to go there. They don't need to go there in order to have a good lifestyle. And it's a big leap. Yeah, it's a really big leap.
The 7% Club, that's what it's going to be called. And I think I kind of heard at the end of May.
Yes, the manuscript is done. It's gone to the publisher, and the book will actually be out at the end of May.
Wow. I mean, that must make you feel really proud, because I mean, not only have you written one book, which is one more than Kevin Appleby and me, but you've written 2. Did it take you a long time, Jenny? Was it something that's quite challenging?
It's a really good question. The first one probably took me 20 years. Second one, probably took me 18 months, but I approached them very differently. The first one, I just had to do it. And then once I'd done it, I hadn't thought about marketing it or what I was doing it for. It was something I just had to do. Whereas this one is it's going to be more strategic for my business, and not about selling books, but about positioning my IP. So
I understand, because what your business now is helping people get from 7 figures up to 8 figures, or have I more or less got that right? So 7 figures would be in that's a million, isn't it? $1 million Australian dollars, but you would get them up to as many as 10 million or above. But actually, the real challenge on the face of it is actually getting them above 2 million Australian dollars, and that's quite a challenge in itself.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, because there's lots of businesses that can get to close to 2 million, say $1.5 million, and you've got the business owner who's doing just about everything with maybe 1 or 2 assistants, and they're exhausted and haven't got much of a life, but they can do it. But to then shift the mindset into that business they have to, I'm building a company and putting on board employees rather than I'll just get, my best friend's neighbour down the road is going to come in and help us out for a bit. And, it's a real shift. And, that's sort of what I talk about in the book. There's a lot of things that need to shift in order to get over that hurdle.
Yeah, probably amongst them.
Is that hurdle the hardest one to get over? And You're getting to 2 million. Only 7% of companies get over 2 million. Is then going to 10 million relatively easy in comparison?
Yeah, I've read a lot of books and done a lot of research for this, and I read anyway, and I'm interested. But I've come across a few references to that hurdle as being called Death Valley.
Yeah,
because it is a really difficult hurdle, and I think once you get over that, then you've got more reference points and more competencies to deal with the bigger hurdles.
yeah.
So I've got a client, for example, well, it was a client, and I helped him get over that. And then once he was at that point, he was able to grow the company. And it's taken quite a long time, but that's now a 9-figure company.
Wow.
So, it has been without its challenges and sleepless nights and all the rest of it. But I think once they get past that first hurdle, they're far better equipped to grow from there.
The Small Business CEO, that book was all about getting small business owners to sort of recognize that there is a difference between a business owner and a CEO, and you within that book, and I was kind of looking at it earlier, there is almost like a list of being a CEO approach and a business owner approach. And just to give you one example of that you highlighted in this book, and it's very much about a CEO will actually think more than they do, and the business owner will do more than think. Now, I don't know if that's probably the one thing that summarizes the difference as well as anything. I know there are other areas that you talk about, but do you want to just sort of give us an idea in your own words what you see the differences are, and then we'll perhaps get onto the book, the new book later.
Well, certainly that's one of them, but being able to think is a bit of a luxury, isn't it? If you're constantly being interrupted, or you're constantly in the thick of doing it, we can't think like that. So that's a big difference, and that refusal to let go. And it is a leap of faith.
Yeah.
It's I've had clients who they hang on but they just won't let go because I think they don't trust what will be on the other side. They don't trust their own capabilities. So letting go. Looking at there's another thing I refer to, I think in both books, the capability gap.
Yeah.
So where the business owner is in the next level down, because they don't want to spend the money. They don't want to go and get someone too experienced or too senior, because that's potentially a bit of a threat and they don't know how to manage them.
Mm-hmm.
So the gap between the most experienced person in the business and them is big, and it shouldn't be that big. So these people are still constantly going to the business owner, and they're asking questions and they need help and they need direction. So that's a huge gap to make that shift from, okay, the better the people in my business, the further we're going to be able to go as a team.
Yeah, I saw you on LinkedIn go through that argument, and I think one of the best parts of that argument was the return on investment, as in all those little interactions, when you add them all up, is a real cost, versus somebody who was almost empowered from day one. Not quite day one, but the point is they can take a lot off your shoulders. That's a really good point, and maybe there's an inflection point that somebody is a business owner, and through your book and through other ways of finding out about this, they all of a sudden realize this. Have you sort of had experience of that, of where people have, oh, you're right, Jenny, this is absolutely what I need to do, let's go and get somebody? Is that what actually happens when you intervene?
It does, and it takes a while. It's not easy, but eventually, if they're serious about growing their business and they're still, under pressure, eventually they will let go enough to put the right people on board, and then it's like, oh my God, this is fantastic.
Yeah.
So it's like anything, just if you have to do something quite differently, like change your golf swing or something, you may not trust it, but eventually you know that continuing this way is not going to work, and I do want to improve, so I have to do this. So they do eventually get there.
Yeah,
if they don't,
well, they're not going to grow, are they? I mean, they're not, or at least they're going to have a huge amount of. And actually, I think that's the point you were making in your LinkedIn dialogue. You were making the point that at some stage people give up because, frankly, it becomes overwhelming. You just cannot grow in that. If there's so much of a gap between you and the next person, then it's on you. Don't they call it key man insurance? That if your key man goes down, your business is gone effectively. And
a good business should be able to run certainly for a reasonable length of time without the business owner being in place.
Absolutely. And that's something I talk about, that your business really has to enable you.
Yeah.
It has to be an enabler for you to have a better life, for you to, look after your kids and your family and do all of that. But if it tethers you, well, what on earth is the point? If you can't step back from it, it's not working. It's just not working.
So, okay, book on Small Business CEO, big success for you, helped you at that point. You've become a CEO for a couple of other people in the interim. Now you've realized that actually this CEO thing, it's more about what I can actually get done in that role, to get people and actually helping people in that role get from one place to another. What was behind your thinking that moved you into that space versus maybe where you were?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it was in the interim of doing this and then doing that and running someone's company and then stepping back. It was really in intervening years fine-tuning what I want. And I know that sounds sort of a bit silly, but it's much harder to work out what we want than what we don't want. And so really fine-tuning the difference between who I could work with and what I could do because of my experience and knowledge and all the rest. And where I found it really interesting, I guess that's where the shift has come in for me, that I want to work more in that space, to work with people who have made that transition to be a CEO, to want to grow their company, to want to create something, and really work with them to help them as much as I can to evolve in that role. So it was just my own thinking and being really clear about who I wanted to work with.
And okay, let's just think about this sort of this scaling aspect of this new book. If you had to sort of summarize on three fingers, what basically the three things somebody would want to take away, that have a look at this, have a look at that, and have a look at the other. What are those three things?
I think the three would be, in terms of how the book is structured, it's based on a framework that I've created as a result of all the work I've done, all the rest of it. And it's a framework, but it's not prescriptive. So there's three components of that. One is simplifying structure. So that they're the people who they've got a big capability gap. They're under the pump. They need to be able to step back, but they can't.
Yeah.
That is more of a transactional piece. Like, let's just get this done in your company, because until this is done, nothing else can happen.
Yeah.
The next stage is what I've called develop and lead. So once you've got the people in place, it's really focusing on the culture, creating an environment where you can attract other people into your business. You've got a capable team that can run the company without you physically being there every day. And that enables the CEO to step back. And there's a component in there that I've called the CEO lens, which is what are the important things that the CEO should be looking at once they've been able to step up. And the third aspect is strategize and scale. And it's all about how to put together a strategic roadmap for your business. And I know might sound silly, but there's so many people that they grow their companies on gut feeling, or they don't really go through a process, and some of them get there anyway. But a lot of them don't know how to go about it. And if you want a really robust strategy and want to understand how to make strategic decisions, that's in that section. So they're the 3 key areas, and you can dive in wherever you need it most.
An example of a strategic decision in that, it's, Kevin gets all this stuff. I've just got a lousy MBA, but basically, what would you say is a strategic decision then, so people can understand it?
I think it's something that's it's not longer term, but it's something that's going to take the business further. It's not necessarily business as usual, and it's looking at a number of options, but understanding which one is going to be the right fit for your business. A lot of people confuse a strategy with, tactics and goals. So a strategic decision is really thinking about, should we make this acquisition? Should we expand into this area?
Getting from A to B is the way I've always sort of thought of strategy, but just taking. I like that idea, because you might actually be getting into the 7% club by simply acquiring somebody who's as big as you, or a little bit bigger, or a little bit smaller, that gets you there. So, I mean, that might be something that you would choose to do, but then of course it's going to get all the other things that goes with it, the integration side, which maybe the other 2 things that you talked about, particularly the development and the leadership, etc., are probably going to help you at that point. So,
well, that's really interesting, because there are companies I've worked with, clients I've had who, they're multi-million-dollar companies, so there's plenty of experience there. But it comes to, say, an opportunity to make an acquisition, and they want to make it for all the wrong reasons. It's like, hang on a minute, let's just look at how that's going to impact the business model, and customer acquisition, and your servicing, and all of this. And a lot of the time it's a really bad strategic fit, and I've had to tell clients not to do that. The acquisition idea is a good one, but the potential target is a bad one, because they don't know how to go through the process of kind of a due diligence, really. So there's a lot, I think, in the book that sometimes I question myself and think, is this obvious? And then I think, no, it's not. A lot of people don't know this.
So this new book and the new book cover, we haven't got sight of it yet then, or presumably you have seen the book cover.
I'm not allowed to show you tonight.
Oh no, I can't believe it.
That's a shame.
Is it because it's got you as a 40-year-old on it? Is that the whole idea?
It's going to be released. The publisher's going to show it in a couple of weeks. I'm not allowed to do it tonight. I'm sorry.
Pesky publishers. It's not going to go out until next month. Doesn't matter. We'll find it eventually and stick it into the show notes. But the beauty of this is that it, you're a multiple author then. So you must have your 3rd book in mind already.
I do, actually.
Good.
Do I need to elaborate?
Of course, but obviously we can't see the book cover.
Elaborate.
Yeah, I mean, we can't see the book cover of that one.
No one else knows this, so I might as well tell you, because you're both interested. But I'd like to explore further on a CEO lens aspect, and really talk to a lot more CEOs. I did interview people and refer back to clients and so on for the book, but really talk to a lot more CEOs across different industries with a lot more questions, and really put something very interesting together around that.
And is this Australian CEOs?
No, not necessarily. Not necessarily. Okay. Yeah.
It'd be interesting to see whether or not there's a cultural aspect, a difference of sort of, like the Aussies are great at sports and things like that. So the mentality is win-win-win. Perhaps the Brits are slightly different, and it's that kind of idea. I don't know if that's going to come out in the international perspective. I'm writing one of the chapters here, aren't I? I suppose I'll get a credit for that.
Of course you will. Look, you might be right, because although Aussies love to win and we're very sporting, we've got a bit of a tall poppy thing going on here. So we've got that as well. So no, I'd like to interview people on a global basis, make it more interesting for everyone.
I love that. Actually, when you first mentioned that phrase, this, what was it, CEO lens? I just love that phrase. I think you're really onto something there, which is probably the name of the book, isn't it? And you've probably secured the URLs already, which I hope you have. And
Note to self, CEO lens URLs.
Yeah, CEO lens is probably somebody out there who's already done it, but who knows? But I really like that idea because it's somebody. I'm supposed to be getting a new webcam. It's not turned up today, as it's supposed to do. But basically, somebody was telling me from Apple the other day that basically the lens is the key thing. You know, people can spend. He was going on about this fantastic amounts of money on lenses, and it just seems to me that a CEO lens. It's almost like the bigger the lens, if you like, the more sort of bandwidth that person's got, and it's almost like your opportunity is to make that lens bigger for people. Or have I got that wrong?
No, that's a very interesting concept. I'm taking it all on board, and I will give you some credit.
Oh well, that's nice of you to say that, but you'll probably say it's Kevin Appleby who said it instead of Graham Harris. But so what can I say? But
I do love this idea of the CEO lens. I mean, a penny has dropped for me today in this conversation about the difficulty of that transition from business owner to CEO. You know, to get from the place where you're doing it all, you're running the show, you're directing people, to having the next level of leadership below you so that you can escape from being the day-to-day focus of everybody. That's number one. But number two is, okay, once you've put those people in place, then there's a big change in your own mindset got to take place. What does this CEO, who's now got a lot of spare time, do with that spare time to be most effective? How do you use this new CEO lens you've got?
That's really a really interesting question. And I look back on my own experience as a first-time CEO when I had 18 direct reports. And it was completely untenable. And when I restructured all that, and I was lucky enough to be in a CEO peer group. And so I had help and support and advice from others. And I restructured that to 5. And that's what happened. Like everything, I had more free time and I had people I could rely on and people I could say, can you go and look at this or bring me back that? And I knew that they would do it. But then what I had to do was completely different. And what I had the time to do was completely different. So that's a really interesting point that you make.
Yeah, and I just think you really you are onto something. And Kevin, you brought the fact that we've almost gone from, you know, small business CEO to the 7% club and the sort of stages. Your secret sauce is being able to recognize you're not this business owner, you're a CEO. You're not this CEO, you're a bigger CEO. You're a transition person, aren't you? You're always trying to make somebody bigger. Yeah,
bigger and more competent in that transition. Yeah, absolutely. Because that's the fulfillment I get. And then obviously my clients who I work with get, you know, significant fulfillment and benefit from it. And that's why I love doing what I do.
That must, when you sort of put the pen down at the end of the day or whatever it is that you've been working on, is that the sense of actually I've really helped somebody to grow? Is that the thing that you will perhaps share with somebody else about your day, that, you know, this guy was like this at one point and now look at him or her or whatever? Is that the thing that really buzzes you, and will that be the emblem for the rest of your life?
I think so. Yeah, I do. And why is that such a big thing? Because I guess when you've come up with some solutions, or you've developed your own insights, and you understand why people are doing the things that they're doing and it's not working. And I've always been interested in business, so that's my thing. to be able to help people and people who are open to being helped, and to see that transition and that development, whether they go on to grow their companies, umpteen times, or whether they sell them successfully and then go and do something else. That's fantastic for me. It's really fantastic. I had a client who, they were typical of everything we've talked about when I started working with them. And over a period of about 8 years, I think, we went through that, helping the owner of the business step up to be the CEO and putting the right people in place and all the processes and making it more efficient and the whole thing. And we had annual strategies, and he ultimately sold his business and made quite a lot as a result of that sale. And he bought me, as a thank you, 2 bottles of Grange Hermitage. The first bottle was the year we started working together, and the second bottle was the year that we finished working together. And that meant more to me than anything. I've still got one bottle downstairs that we're keeping for something special, but that really meant a lot.
Well, that's a superb present. I mean, it's the sort of thing that you'll do with me,
I
Kevin,
know.
won't you? You'll probably get me a bottle of pale ale from when we started and a bottle of pale ale when we finish.
I probably should have bought that bottle of pale ale a few years ago, Graham. The problem with pale ale is it have gone off by now.
Oh, well, that's well, on that note, but no, seriously, I think you're surrounded by people who've rocked up at your door, who basically probably have already got it into their mind that they want to grow because they've found you out. I won't imagine that you're knocking on doors saying, by the way, would you like me to help you grow? But at the end of the day, they've found you out. What is it about some of those clients that you say no to? If they don't have the right whatever, you just say, no, you're never going to do it. I'm not going to work with you.
In all honesty, it's the bright shiny object syndrome, and busy. I'm so busy and I'm in a meeting with you and I'm not really listening. Oh, someone's rung my phone, and that distracted mind.
Yeah.
But that's probably my personality too. It does
No.
fit in. So if someone is functioning like that, it's going to be really hard to help them.
Yeah.
Even if they keep coming back, it's still hard to help them, because what they want to do and what they think is right still overrides everything, even if they think maybe the advice is right. And I think that's basically it. If they want advice and they're open to it and they actually implement, they're great clients.
Yeah.
It's just I think the ones who are still caught up in their busyness of the day-to-day and the distractions and they can't get away from that. I can't help.
No, I Kevin, you'll realize this as well, won't you? Because there'll be certain clients that you'll have come across that you realize that you just can't help them.
Absolutely. Yeah. You very much got to be open to there being something different there. And funnily enough, working a lot in the public sector in the UK, the interesting place, and dealing with people, dealing with the uniformed services is very interesting versus dealing with, say, civil servants. There's a mindset there that says, I've got to do this, I've got to get on with it, I don't know how to do it, please help, versus this is my job, this is my area, I'm being very protective of it, go away. And there's
you can't do anything with that.
You can't do it. You can't do very much with those people that want to protect what they've got.
No.
And there is something in growing a business that you've grown a lot of stuff around you, a lot of stuff that you feel, I suppose, a certain ownership to, because you implemented it in the first place. You put it in place. It's your baby. So letting go of that is incredibly difficult, but you've got to let go of it to move on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, we all struggle to let go of lots of things, like, the the friends that maybe it's time, it's a natural time, but we don't want to let go, or that lots of things that we fear letting go of just because they've always been there, and even with a business, I don't want to let my clients go. Yeah, but some of them are costing you money. You shouldn't have those clients.
Yeah.
But they're my clients. I don't want to let them go.
Yeah,
They're costing you
they
money.
might have been the early clients that helped you over those initial hurdles that you've had great relationship with. They almost became friends. And it's very, very difficult to make that decision because it's so personal.
Mm.
You're hurtling towards a position in your career that basically says, I am going to be this sort of growth maven. I will identify the bits of the things that you're going to put in the cake that's going to get somebody from one place to another. And I think that's a really exciting place to be, because most people want growth, but it's understanding what the heck they're going to do to get from A to B. And that's the bit that probably, I don't know how many times you find this, but there's probably so many strategic options that they haven't got a Scooby which one to take. And I wonder whether or not that leads to, I tell you what, we'll just keep doing what we're doing. And but what you're trying to do, I think, in your career is with certainly with a new book and with this consultancy around that, is help people with that sort of, it's like it's not one cake, it's lots of different cakes, but basically you're putting some of the ingredients in for them. And I think that's, for me, it's incredibly exciting.
Well, it's that's true. And even as you said, with making those decisions, I've had clients who've got all the opportunities, but they don't necessarily, even after having been in business for 20 odd years, they don't necessarily have the framework to then filter the opportunities and prioritize them and say, right, these are the top 2 or 3 things that we're focused on for our growth in the next few years, because they just don't have the reference points. And you're right, sometimes they choose the wrong thing, or they just stick to business as usual because it's too hard. So if I can keep learning with my clients and developing more IP and tools and frameworks that help them, it's a win-win. It's fantastic. So that's what I want to keep doing.
Good for you. Well, Jenny, we've kind of got to the end of the amount of time that we can devote to you, which I'd go on forever, but because I think there's so much to learn from you. But at the end of the day, Kevin and I are very grateful that you've joined us today on the Next 100 Days podcast.
See, Graham, that transition from being a business owner to a CEO, I hadn't really thought about it that much before, but it is a big deal. And we talked about 2 million Australian dollars, and to put that in context, there's very roughly 2 Australian dollars to pound.
Right. Okay.
So you're talking $1 million UK. You're probably talking about 1.2, 1.3 million US, 2 million Australian. And you can have a decent company at $1 million.
Yeah.
You can have a few people working for you, but it's saying to me, you can get to 7 figures, but getting any further into 7 figures than just the very bottom is a big, big challenge.
Mm.
And there's something people talk about having a 7-figure business.
Mm.
I wonder if that's the wrong thing to talk about, because you can get to 7 figures. Whether you can get well into 7 figures and towards eight figures is a completely different thing.
I think Jenny was pointing out that there are different phases and there are different approaches between, for instance, being a business owner and a CEO. And if you start thinking about those different approaches and those as an individual owner of a business that's growing, you almost have to transition yourself, have to recognize you have to transition yourself. And then to grow to being over, get into the 7% club, then you almost have to transition again, because there are certain things that you have to decide on, strategic decisions, as we discussed. So I think this idea of transitioning from relatively small business like maybe yours and mine up to the £1 million kind of business, it's quite a challenging thought. And you need people, you need to change your mindset, etc., etc. And what Jenny's doing is she's dropping herself into those spaces where people need help to make that transition. So that was quite.
There are some decision points in there. The first decision point is probably you're in very low six figures.
Yeah,
and that's you've created this business. It might be a typical corporate escapee. I've set my own business up. It's essentially me. Okay, and I might need an assistant. I might need somebody to do a bit of marketing for me. You can outsource some of those roles. So you need. Yeah. You think about, well, I want a six-figure salary, but hey, there's now some overhead, so maybe I've got to double that. So you might be going into somewhere up towards the 250k mark. To go from 250k to $1 million, I think you've got to have a mindset change, because it's, am I doing this just for me as a lifestyle business? Or am I doing this to grow something bigger?
Yeah, it's a very good point. And that's the essence. I think it's probably why so many people are in the 93% as opposed to the 7%, because probably of the 93%, many of them are lifestyle businesses. Venture to suggest probably my own is. So
I'd venture to suggest that an awful lot of these are the 80% is probably the below the $250,000. Walk up the high street. How many small businesses are there where it's one or two people running a shop?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's, I think, round figures are about 5 million small businesses in the UK. So, if you're talking about 7% of those, and it's what, 30,000 businesses that have got themselves into that bigger place, whereas 5 point whatever million.
It's something we talked about before in the context of marketing and fan base and whatever. It's the Pareto of the Pareto.
Very much.
80% of the tiny businesses.
The
20% that aren't, you can put another 80-20 on it, and that gives you roughly that 7% that we've been talking about today.
Yeah, it's very much that fractal thing and going on there. And I think, I look forward to Jenny's book, which very strongly recommend. She was really praised for the Small Business CEO book because of the way in which she explained things. It's quite English, if you know what I mean. It's not MBA jargon. It's very much put into language that people can accept. And I think if that's Jenny's style with the new book that she's got planned, as well as the one that's just about to come out, then I think the CEO lens, I think that is a superb idea, because it's one of those things that it is about ingredients, because she'll be able to help define some of those things that are going to move people into the spaces that they want to achieve. So it's been a really interesting conversation. Jenny's been a fantastic guest, and today, well, I've been Graham Arrowsmith.
I've been Kevin Appleby. Goodbye.
Goodbye.